I wasn't supposed to see it. I wasn't even supposed to be there. The plan was, drop her off, circle the block once or twice, maybe grab coffee, and pick her up in an hour. It was her friend's engagement party, one of those upscale, rented loft, wine glass in hand kind of things. The type of crowd where everyone's trying to impress everyone, and I usually just get in the way. She told me it was just a quick appearance, and I didn't question it. I didn't argue. I never do. I just pulled up to the curb like a good little driver, kissed her cheek when she leaned in half-heartedly, and watched her walk through the glass doors in that tight silver dress she didn't wear for me anymore. But I didn't drive off. I don't know why. Something in my chest tightened the second she disappeared inside. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was everything. I just sat there, engine running, hands locked on the wheel. Then I saw her, through the window, smiling, but not at me. He was already next to her, tall, well-dressed, confident in that nauseating way that guys like him always are. He didn't hesitate. He didn't fumble. His hand was on the small of her back within seconds. She didn't move away. I watched her laugh, the kind of laugh she hadn't made around me in a long time. The kind that comes from your stomach. The kind that used to be mine. And then the music started. She turned to him, touched his arm, said something that made him smirk. And then, in front of everyone, in front of me, she reached for his hand. And they danced, right there, in the middle of the crowd, like they were in their own world, like nothing else mattered, like I didn't exist. My hand was still on the steering wheel, my mouth slightly open. I couldn't even blink, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe I was watching my wife fall in love with someone else, right in front of me. She spun into him. He pulled her close. Her fingers traced the back of his neck. That was it. That was the moment. Something inside me cracked. Quietly. No rage, no drama. Just this deep, hollow silence that flooded every part of me. And I left. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Didn't honk the horn like some jealous fool. I just put the car in gear and drove off into the night like I'd been erased. But what I didn't know then was that walking away, quietly, would hit her harder than any fight ever could. Because within minutes, she realized exactly what she'd done. I didn't go far. Just enough to be gone. Just enough to feel like I'd taken something back. I parked in a grocery store lot a few blocks away and sat there with my hands shaking on my lap, wondering if what I saw was real or if I was finally losing it. The thing is, I've always been the kind of guy who gives too much benefit of the doubt. I'll gaslight myself before I accuse someone else. Maybe she was being friendly. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm insecure. That's what she always says. You're too sensitive, Jared. Not everything's about you. But when I opened her location on my phone, the one she forgot she'd shared with me months ago when she was late coming home once, it told me I wasn't crazy. She was still at the party. She hadn't texted, hadn't called. I'd been gone for 35 minutes, and she hadn't even noticed. Or maybe she had, and she just didn't care. I stared at that pulsing dot on the map like it was a heartbeat I couldn't reach. I kept waiting for it to move, to show she was looking for me, calling me, stepping outside, something. But nothing. Just stillness. Like I never existed. Like the man who drove her there, who kissed her cheek, who loved her more than anyone else ever could, was a ghost she'd already forgotten. At the 50-minute mark, my phone finally buzzed. Sierra, hey, where'd you go? That's it. No punctuation. No emoji. No concern. Just a casual sentence like I'd stepped out to grab napkins or something. Not like her husband had vanished without a word. I didn't respond. 3 minutes later. Sierra, seriously? Then the call started. First one. Then 3 more. I watched them come in without touching the screen. I wanted her to feel it, the absence, the silence, the nothingness she left me with. I wanted her to sit in it. When she finally texted again, it was different. Sierra, you embarrassed me. I had to make excuses. People asked where you went. That broke something in me all over again. You embarrassed me. Not I'm sorry. Not please come back. Not I didn't mean to make you feel invisible. Just blame. As if I was the one who had done something shameful by leaving. Not her, for dancing like I didn't exist. So I wrote one sentence. Just one. Me. You didn't even look for me. And I turned off my phone. I sat in that dark parking lot for another hour. No music. No lights. Just this growing realization that maybe I wasn't married to the woman I thought I was. Maybe I never had been. Maybe all the years, the sacrifices, the quiet forgiveness I kept handing her like candy. Maybe none of it mattered anymore. Not when another man could pull her away with a single smirk and a dance. When I finally drove home, the house was dark. I didn't expect her to be back yet, but somehow I still felt the emptiness the moment I stepped inside. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't pour myself a drink. I just sat on the edge of the bed, still in my stupid button-down shirt, staring at the closet where her heels used to be perfectly lined up, wondering how long she'd been slipping away before I noticed. The front door opened at 1:17 a.m. I didn't move. She called my name once, confused, almost annoyed, then walked into the bedroom and froze when she saw me sitting there. And for the first time in a long, long while, she looked nervous. She just stood there for a second, staring at me like she was trying to read what kind of mood I was in before deciding how to play it. Her purse was still slung over her shoulder. Her makeup was smudged slightly under her left eye. She looked like she'd been caught, not necessarily doing something criminal, but doing something wrong. And still, she tried to smile. "You could have at least told me you were leaving," she said, like I'd just wandered off during a shopping trip. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just stared at her, letting the silence do the work for me. She sighed, walked into the room like she owned the air between us, and started unzipping her dress. "You're being dramatic," she muttered, turning her back to me. "It was just a dance. I told you it'd be a quick night." It was in that moment, that casual shrug of a moment, that I felt something shift inside me. Not explode, not boil, just detach. Like a rope that had been holding my love tightly anchored to this woman finally came loose. And I didn't panic. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just watched her like she was a stranger rifling through my closet. She tossed the dress onto the chair, like it was nothing. Like she hadn't worn it hours ago while laughing into another man's chest. "I saw you," I finally said quietly. My voice cracked more than I wanted it to, but I didn't care anymore. She froze mid-step, her back still to me. "What?" "I saw you through the window. You danced with him like I didn't even exist." She turned slowly. Her face went pale for just a second, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. She blinked twice and said, "Jared, come on. It was a party. People were dancing. Were you thinking about me at all while his hands were all over you?" "You're overreacting." That was her go-to. The magic spell she always used to end arguments before they started. "I didn't even know you were watching. You didn't even notice I was gone." That hit her. I could see it. Her jaw twitched, and her arms folded like she was suddenly cold. I had a couple glasses of wine. I got caught up in the moment. God, I didn't think I had to ask permission to dance. "It's not about permission," I snapped, finally standing up. My voice still wasn't loud, but it cut deeper than anything I'd said in weeks. "It's about respect. It's about not making your husband feel like a coat rack while you wrap yourself around someone else." That made her flinch, only slightly, but it was there. She sat down on the edge of the bed across from me, and for once, she didn't have a quick answer. I expected her to cry, to apologize, to say something sincere. Instead, she looked away and whispered, "I just needed to feel wanted." I felt my heart stutter in my chest. "Not by me?" I asked. She didn't answer. And in that second, that tiny sliver of truth she couldn't deny or explain, I realized I was losing her. Or maybe I'd already lost her months ago, and tonight was just when the truth finally caught up to me. But here's the thing. She might have gotten what she wanted out there on that dance floor, but so did I. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. Now I knew exactly what she was. And I was done being the one who begged to be noticed. The next morning, I woke up before she did. Not because I slept well. I didn't. I barely closed my eyes. But something about the silence felt easier to live with than hearing her breathe next to me. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was detachment. Like I was floating through a version of my own life I didn't recognize anymore. She rolled over eventually, still in her tank top and shorts, her voice scratchy with fake innocence. "Are you still mad?" I didn't answer. I just kept folding laundry. That's what I'd been doing since dawn. Quiet things. Productive things. Anything to stop myself from feeling. She watched me for a second, then added, "I told you it didn't mean anything." Her tone was soft now, almost pleading, but I didn't buy it. Not after watching her press her body into someone else like I didn't matter. If it didn't mean anything, why did it still feel like a knife in my gut? Instead of responding, I picked up her folded clothes and left them on her side of the bed. She stared at them like they were a threat. By the time I walked into the kitchen, I heard her phone buzz. Then buzz again. A man's name popped up on the screen. I didn't recognize it, but I didn't need to. There was only one person she'd danced with last night. Only one man whose touch made her forget I existed. She didn't answer his call, but she didn't delete the message either. That was the turning point. That's when I stopped trying to talk, stopped trying to explain how much she'd broken me. I'd spent years over-communicating, years saying this hurts, and can we talk? And I don't feel seen anymore. It never changed anything. Maybe she was addicted to being chased. Maybe she thought I'd always be here, always bending, always swallowing my pride to fix what she kept breaking. So I stopped. I went quiet. I didn't slam doors. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't sleep on the couch. I just acted like I wasn't hurt, like I didn't care. I made my coffee, answered emails, even whistled while I took out the trash. I acted like she didn't matter, and that scared her more than any fight ever had. By lunch, she was circling me, hovering, asking if I wanted to go out for dinner later, suggesting we take a weekend trip. Some time away could be good for us, she said. Us. She still had the nerve to say us after what she did. I nodded, but didn't promise anything. And that was the moment I saw it, the fear, the flicker in her eyes, the shift from confidence to confusion. She didn't know where she stood anymore, and it rattled her. Because for the first time, I wasn't begging to be loved. I wasn't fighting to be chosen. I was letting her feel the same weight I carried for years. And she could already feel it slipping, not because I said anything, but because I didn't. By the second day, she started watching me like I was a stranger in our house. I wasn't doing anything dramatic. That was the point. I wasn't yelling, wasn't accusing, wasn't demanding answers or begging for apologies. I just existed next to her, quietly, deliberately, as if she were a guest in my space now, not the woman I once imagined forever with. And the silence was getting to her. She started trying harder, not in the romantic sense, but in this weird performative way, like she was auditioning for a role she'd forgotten how to play. She wore lipstick at breakfast. She cooked dinner, which she hadn't done in weeks. She even asked if I wanted to re-watch that series we never finished. I said sure. We sat down that night, just like old times, but this time I didn't sit close. I didn't touch her leg. I didn't offer commentary or jokes or anything that made it feel like us. I just stared at the screen and let the silence hum between us. Halfway through the second episode, she turned it off. I can't do this if you're going to act like a ghost, she snapped. If you're mad, just say it. I looked at her, slow and steady, and said, I'm not mad. That shook her. She blinked twice, like I'd spoken in a language she didn't understand. I'm not mad, I repeated. I'm just finally listening. She stared at me for a long second, then looked away like the words physically stung. To what? To everything you've shown me. She didn't speak after that, just got up and left the room. That night, she didn't come to bed until nearly 3 a.m. I was still awake when she walked in, but I kept my back to her. I heard her pause in the doorway, heard the shuffle of her feet. She stood there for maybe 10 seconds before she quietly turned around and went to sleep in the guest room. The next morning, the mood had shifted. She came down with red eyes and a pale face. Did we just stop trying? She asked me softly, as if trying to reach back through a window that had already closed. I didn't answer, because deep down, she knew. She stopped trying a long time ago. I was just finally matching her energy. She made coffee and tried to smile when she handed me a mug, but her hand trembled slightly, like her nerves were catching up with her choices. I thanked her politely, calmly, like I was accepting coffee from someone I worked with, not someone who used to be the center of my world. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey man, I didn't know she was married. I swear. No name, no intro, just guilt, raw and panicked. My hand started shaking, but I didn't respond. Instead, I showed it to her, just walked over, placed the phone on the counter with the message open, and walked away. She didn't say a word. Her hand covered her mouth, like she might throw up. She had no idea I still had eyes and ears everywhere. No idea that while she danced in someone else's arms, I'd already started preparing for this fallout. And now, she couldn't stop it. Because the one thing she never expected was me walking away first. She cried for the first time the next night. Not loud sobs. Not performative. Just quiet, bitter tears that she tried to hide under the blanket when she thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I hadn't really slept since the night of the party. My eyes stayed closed, my breathing steady, but I could feel her shaking next to me. Small tremors. And I hated myself for how much I still wanted to hold her, even after everything. But I didn't move. I stayed still, and I let her cry alone. By morning, she was trying to act normal again. She made pancakes, sat beside me, smiled too wide. I was thinking we could drive up to the lake house this weekend. She said like it was nothing. Like there wasn't a man out there who had his hands on her while I stood forgotten, just outside the window. I nodded. Sure. She waited. I could tell she wanted more. She wanted me to argue, or ask why, or do something. But I didn't. I just kept chewing. She was drowning in her own silence now, and I wasn't going to throw her a rope. Later that day, I started gathering things, little things, and putting them in a box. My camera, my books, a few clothes. Nothing major. Nothing she'd notice right away. I didn't know what I was doing at first, not really. It just felt like I needed to make space between me and her, even if it was only a drawer's worth, even if it was only in my mind. She noticed eventually. Are you packing? Her voice cracked slightly when she asked it. I looked at her and shrugged. Just organizing. That answer scared her more than if I'd screamed. She watched me like I was slipping through her fingers, and she wasn't sure when it had started. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe she thought she could break the rules of marriage without consequences. Maybe she thought I'd always be the one apologizing, the one chasing. But I wasn't chasing anymore. That night, I left the house after dinner and didn't say where I was going. I just grabbed my keys and walked out. It was the first time in years that I didn't feel the need to explain myself to her. I drove around aimlessly for a while, ended up in an old parking lot outside a bookstore that was closed. I sat there in the dark and texted a number I hadn't used in over a year, someone who'd once meant something to me before I ever met Sierra. I didn't flirt. I didn't cross lines. I just said, hey, I hope you're doing well. And it felt like breathing for the first time in weeks. When I got home, she was sitting on the floor of our bedroom, not crying this time, just sitting there, legs crossed, staring at the corner of the wall like it had answers. I miss us, she whispered when I walked in. I didn't answer, because what she really missed wasn't us. It was the version of me who needed her, who forgave everything, who stayed silent so she could stay selfish. But that version of me was already gone. She finally said it the next morning. The word I thought I wanted. The word I'd begged for silently in my head for days. She walked into the kitchen while I was pouring coffee, stood behind me like she didn't know how to begin, and whispered it like a confession too small to fix anything. I'm sorry. I didn't turn around. I let the silence drag on so long it became uncomfortable. Eventually, she moved beside me, searching my face, her eyes red but dry. I know I hurt you, she said. I know what I did at that party wasn't okay. Still, I said nothing. Not because I hadn't heard her, but because I had. I'd heard everything, loud and clear. The moment she chose to dance with someone else while I stood outside like an afterthought, that was the apology. Not in words, but in value. She showed me exactly where I stood, what I was worth, how little she thought I'd fight back. But the truth was, I wasn't going to fight at all. I was going to leave. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I pulled it away. No yelling, no big scene, just a quiet retreat. And that's when I saw her truly panic. I don't want to lose us, she said suddenly. I don't even know why I did it. I felt invisible lately. I needed to feel like someone still wanted me. The irony of that nearly knocked the air out of me. Invisible? I had been a ghost in our marriage for over a year. I'd poured energy, love, money, attention into a relationship that only fed her ego. I wasn't her partner. I was her mirror, and when I stopped reflecting what she wanted to see, she went looking for someone who would. And now she was terrified, not because she missed me, but because she realized I might actually be done. Later that day, she tried to act normal again, offered to order takeout, asked if I wanted to go for a walk, brought up old memories from our early days like she could stitch us back together with nostalgia. But the damage had already been done. My mind was elsewhere now. My phone had messages from an apartment listing I'd quietly inquired about 2 towns over. A furnished 1-bedroom. No shared closet. No history. And then, the twist I didn't expect. That night, while I was brushing my teeth, she walked into the bathroom holding a small black box. I was going to give this to you for our anniversary, she said. Inside was a keychain. Silver. Engraved with the words, "You are my always." I stared at it hollow. This was the woman who laughed into another man's neck while I stood outside like a stranger. And now she thought a keychain would fix it? She looked up at me with eyes that were finally afraid. Please don't leave, she whispered. And that's when I realized she had already been left. Not with bags or shouting or drama, but with silence, with distance, with me slowly reclaiming the pieces of myself she forgot how to love. The night before I left, she tried everything. She cooked a full dinner, my favorite, lit candles, wore the same dress she wore on our second anniversary, played the playlist we used to put on during long drives, back when we still talked like best friends and held hands at stoplights. She smiled across the table like she believed it wasn't too late. Like one dinner could undo the quiet avalanche that had buried us both. I ate the food. I nodded politely. I even laughed once when she brought up an old inside joke. But none of it touched me. It felt like I was watching someone else live my life from behind soundproof glass. And the truth was, I had already said goodbye, just not out loud. That night, I packed the last of my things. Not in front of her. I waited until she fell asleep, or at least pretended to. I moved quietly through the dark, heart racing, hands steady. I left the keychain on the nightstand, face down. I didn't need to be anyone's, always. I needed to be my own again. By sunrise, I was gone. No note. No goodbye speech. No final confrontation. Just silence. The same silence she'd fed for months before I ever realized how hungry it would make me for peace. At first, she called. A lot. Then she texted. At first, it was guilt. Then blame. Then panic. Then nothing. She stopped. And that's when I knew she finally understood. I wasn't coming back. 2 months later, I was living in a small apartment on the other side of town. No shared photos. No eggshells. Just space. Freedom. My own name on the lease. I didn't need noise to fill the silence anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was tired, but free. And then, the unexpected happened. One Sunday morning, I walked into the cafe by my place. The one with the crooked chalkboard sign out front and mismatched mugs. And there she was. Not Sierra. Her. The girl from my past. The one I had messaged quietly the night everything started to crumble. The one I never stopped wondering about. She looked up, smiled. I was hoping I'd run into you, she said. And in that moment, no drama, no guilt, no baggage. I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Ease. A simple, warm quiet. A smile I didn't have to chase or earn. Just peace. We talked for over an hour. Laughed like no time had passed. She didn't ask about Sierra, and I didn't need to explain. She could see it in my eyes. I was no longer the man trying to be chosen. I was the man who had chosen himself. And that made all the difference. I don't know where it'll go, and that's okay. All I know is this. I walked away the night she danced with someone else, and I never looked back. But life? Life danced me somewhere better.